Welcome to Fatherhood Voices, Breaking the Toxic Cycle. Dive in as real dads bear all, the mess-ups, make-ups, and every heartfelt moment in between. It's raw, it's real, and it might just change the way you see family.
Welcome to another episode of Fatherhood Voices. I'm Alyssa Darty, the co-host, and today will be a solo podcast. For those of you who haven't heard, my father, Edward Darty, was involved in a serious accident the morning of October 10th. He spent multiple days in the ICU, being intubated and sedated, and there were a few times where we didn't know if he was going to make it through. Since then, he has started his recovery journey, and he has been released from the hospital, and he is now recovering at home. A special thank you to all of those people who have provided so much love and support throughout this journey. One of the things that I could have never expected that was actually really beautiful that came out of this entire experience was the community that my dad has built, and really getting to understand the magnitude of people he has impacted and continues to impact every single day, whether that be through this podcast, through his funny antics, or just helping people out. Sorry, it's gonna take me a minute. My father has been a voice for healing, and he has not only been, I'm gonna struggle a little bit, just stay with me. Try to get there as much as I can. My father has been a voice for healing, and he's not only helped out fathers, but he's also helped out parents. And he has dedicated a lot of his time to helping parents not only heal themselves, but heal their relationships with their children. And he has also been able to step out of his ego, step out of his own pride, and be very vulnerable in a very public way in a lot of public forums. And he's been able to admit the things that he's done wrong. And although he's still learning and we are still growing together and our family is still growing, it has been really amazing to see all of the work that he's done and all of the people that he's impacted. And to know that when things did essentially hit the fan, people showed up. They showed their light, they provided their support, they showed their love, and it's been amazing. Now, this experience has not only flipped my family's world upside down, but it has shown us our own strength, individually and together as a family unit. We've really been put through the ringer of testing us, of how to come together as a family and how to just pull forth when hardship has just completely hit us. You know, one of the things that I've come to realize is you never truly understand just how much gratitude that you have towards life until dire circumstances have come into your path, until you have been faced with death, not only spiritually through a spiritual death or some type of awakening within yourself, but with physical death that comes not only to yourself, but with those around you and those that matter most to you. It has really been such an eye-opening experience and has definitely changed a lot of my outlooks on life, a lot of my everyday things that I just basically walked through, or I was on autopilot, just going through the motions, as we tend to put ourselves into autopilot sometimes and not really live intentionally and conscientiously about the things that we are doing. Now, one of the things that I do want to talk about today is a topic that my dad has previously touched on in his content before. And there have been multiple videos where he's brought up the life circumstance of what happens once your parents start needing care. Or if you're the parent, what happens when that day comes when you start needing round-the-clock care, nursing care, whatever it is, when you start needing help. Because it is essential that you start thinking about it. This is part of life. And I know that there's been some controversy around this because there are parents and children who don't have the best relationships with their kids or with their parents. And this has been a very sensitive topic because there are people that we even know who don't have great relationships with their parents, but have ended up being the ones who have to take care of them and have chosen to be there for them, even though their parents may not have been the best parents or have possibly even put them through trauma. This is something that I had to come face to face with myself. I had to ask the hard questions within me, within all of the work that me and my dad have done, whether I can be there. And I will tell you that for me at this point, it wasn't even a question of whether I was going to step up and handle everything that I needed to in order to help my family move through this hardship. But with that, It is so essential to create a plan for your family. This was something that we were absolutely not prepared for, but there were certain things that my dad put into place that made it a little bit easier. Certain things that I was in tune that made moving through finances and making sure that business was taken care of that I am grateful for. Although, Dad, you could have done a little better. I'm just saying, there's a lot of conversations that are coming in the next months where we're hoping this never happens again, but there's going to come those days where it's just a part of life where we're going to have some hard conversations about getting everything organized. And I know personally with, deaths that have happened within the family in the last few years, just how chaotic it can be when there's a death of a loved one and you have no information whatsoever about what their finances are, what type of life insurances they have, all of the things that just come with having to now not only grieve, but take care of what needs to be done. So we're going to talk a little bit about what you need to do to make sure that your family is taken care of, and some things that I have learned through experience and also had a lot of people that were providing guidance and support on how to keep not only myself and my family taken care of, but to also understand how to advocate for my dad. Now, I am essentially pretty good at I am essentially pretty good at compartmentalizing my emotions when things happen. And that's not always the right way to handle things, but it's the way that I tend to handle things. And that's that when tragedy hits, when accidents happen, I am pretty good about just being able to, whether I have that initial breakdown and I have a person or a couple of people where I feel like I can just break down, but sometimes I cannot break down. Sometimes I compartmentalize to the point where I just go directly into business mode. And throughout this process, that was something that I did. I had my moments. I knew things just didn't sit right. I knew something was wrong. And we just had to go through all these steps to try and figure out what was going on, where my dad was, what had happened. And I essentially took over a lot of different things, but it also put my emotions on the back burner, which is not always the right way to handle things, but sometimes it happens. And believe me, I've had many breakdowns throughout this entire process, even to this day. And one of the things you have to understand is when you're moving through something like this, you have to allow space for your emotions to breathe. You have to allow them to move through you. I had a breakdown the day that I finally went back to work, the day that I finally went back into my full routine. It was a lot because I was remembering the last day that I was in my full routine, the last day of normalcy. That's the day that everything happened. That's the day that everything unfolded. And unfortunately, that brought a lot of anxiety, and I really struggled, even just going through the motions of getting ready, going to work. And I took comfort in that having a conversation with my dad and explaining to him, I'm struggling today, and I'm so grateful that he was in a space where he could now talk. He was no longer intubated, and we could talk about this. And I was able to share my emotions. It was all of the leftover, and it's things that me and my family are still continuing to move through. So it's really important to just understand that the initial emotions of moving through it is one thing, but the aftermath of everything is also something you have to leave room for, because that's something that still does come up, and it's going to be a process, because it's something that we are still working through, and I myself am still working through. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know is during the last days that my dad was in the hospital, I tested positive with COVID, and that added another layer of universal hardship to this entire process. So unfortunately, I did get sick, and I did not get to see my dad when he was in the hospital the last few days, and I did not get to see him when he was released from the hospital, which was really hard on me because I had a quarantine from my family, and I struggled with that. I really struggled with my dad being home and not being able to be there with him, not being able to hug him and talk to him. I had to wait. And that was something that I really did struggle through. Since then, I have been able to see my dad, and it was just really amazing to see him out of the hospital because of the condition that he was in before. Was extremely jolting to see my dad that way. It's really important that when things happen, to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. And that is way easier said than done. I will tell you from experience, I have strange eating schedules now because I wasn't really eating. And I know that that's something that my mom and my family, it just kind of threw us all off, especially with just the basic necessities of taking care of yourself. And it's really important that if you have somebody else who's there to provide support to you, that you have somebody that you can assign to doing something as simple as making sure that you're eating. Because eating was not even a conversation for myself and my mother unless somebody brought it up and said, hey, you need to eat something. Have you eaten today? Otherwise, our routine was waking up, checking in on my dad, calling the nurses, heading out to the hospital, and spending the day there. And it wasn't even a question of if we can go. It was, we are going to be there every single day that he is there. One of us will be there just to make sure that we know what's going on. And it was great to have the support that we did, but unfortunately not everybody has that type of support. But if you do, I am urging you, have a designated person who can become that person who does all the little things for you. They run the errands. They make sure that you're eating. They make sure that you have water. They make sure your dog is fed at home. All of those little things that need to be taken care of, especially if you have pets or kids. Make sure that you have somebody that you trust that can do all of those little things so that you can be present in what's going on. And you can make sure that you are fully present in what's going on with your loved one. You know, one of the things that I learned throughout this process was you have to advocate for your loved ones. No one else is going to have their absolute best interest except for you. And I do hope that, I don't hope that this ever happens to anybody, but if you do end up in the situation, that you do end up with a really good staff, some good doctors, some good nurses, because if you don't, it's going to be a lot more of a struggle. And one of the things that somebody told me was, you have to advocate for your loved ones. You have to be the one who's making sure that they're getting the proper care. You have to make sure that they're keeping you up to date on what's going on. And essentially, somebody explained to me, sometimes you have to be a borderline asshole about it. You can't just assume that you are going to be in the loop with every single thing and that you're going to be kept up to date. You really have to make sure that you are on top of what is going on while your loved one is in the hospital, especially if they are intubated, sedated in any type of way where they cannot speak for themselves, or mentally they are just not there where they can even explain to you what's going on or if they're even receiving proper care. One of the things that I had to do was I had to essentially speak to somebody about the communication that was being handled with my family, because unfortunately it wasn't the greatest to start off with. Another thing that was shared with me was making sure that you ask the questions. And this is really essential because I went through this of asking multiple rounds of questions and not realizing that I didn't actually understand what was being explained to me within my father's injuries. And one of the things was let me start that part over. One of the things that was explained to me, my family, was how important it was to ask questions and make sure that we understood everything that was going on. So with that, I had some great people who were leading me throughout those questions on how to ask them. And I would even recommend use ChatGPT, because at times I had to use Google, ChatGPT, whatever it is. Those are great resources if you don't know what the proper questions are to ask. Because essentially, we did not understand all of the injuries. We understood the magnitude, but we didn't understand exactly what was happening. So it was teaching ourselves and walking through that. Ask as many questions as you need to until you understand. And if you don't understand what's going on, ask the doctors to explain it in simple terms. Ask the surgical team, ask the nurses, can you please explain this so that I can understand it? And it's not that they're doing it on purpose to where you don't understand it, but there is specific medical terminology that you are going to hear, and you might not understand it. And it's okay if you don't understand it, but ask your questions. Don't be afraid to ask, why is my loved one being given this specific medication? Why are they going into surgery again? What is it that you're doing? Why are you doing this? What happened? Make sure that you know and understand everything that's going on. And I would even recommend you to go a step further. Get yourself a journal or a notebook. Start a Google Doc. Do something where you can keep all of the information that you have in one space. Having that is essential because you can look back on it and you can look back on what was happening, how they were being treated, what was their injuries, everything that relates to what is going on with the care of your loved one while they are there. And you can also add in the aftercare. So I would strongly recommend get a Google Sheet, get a Microsoft Doc, get yourself a notebook, keep it in hand, and keep it with you all the time that you are there. Don't be afraid to ask any questions. That's what the staff is there to also help you with. And don't feel like you're bugging them. Because sometimes you have to bug. And sometimes you have to ask questions. And sometimes you have to keep asking for certain things over and over again until they get done. Just say. It is also really essential that your communication is something that is manageable. I cannot tell you the amount of response I got just from updating people on what had happened. There were so many people, so many families, so many friends, so many people that wanted an update, which I totally understood, but it was so overwhelming to the point where I could not keep up with all the people reaching out. And of course, there are other loved ones, there are other people who want to know what's going on, but I would recommend that you choose one person that becomes the contact person for giving everybody updates. If that's something that is available to you, make sure that you do it. It is essential and it takes the load off of you while you're moving through this. And I would say the contact person for my family was me. And that's because I wanted to take that off of my mom so that everybody wasn't essentially overwhelming her, because I knew that I can handle everybody overwhelming me and being able to update everybody. Consider starting group text messages. If you have people that you want to update and you're going to be giving the same updates anyways, don't do what I did. Don't go too long giving separate updates and, to different people. Although some ways it was good because these mix of people were just different. But if it's family, start a group chat with all of those family members that you're going to be updating and send it all in one place. Take that stress off of yourself. And if it's not on you, go ahead and give it to somebody else that you can trust to just be the person who gives all the communication. They ask them the questions. They answer them as much as they can. And something that is really important that I want to bring up is self-care. You really need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, but it is so easy to allow your self-care to slip within the cracks. It's not easy when you're moving through the motions, when you're barely living at home, but you have other responsibilities, when you are essentially living in a hospital for days on end. But it is so important to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. And it's okay to give yourself breaks throughout this process. It's okay to have somebody else be in that room with your loved one. But I do urge you to be specific about who you choose. Make sure that if you're going to have somebody in your place, it's somebody that you trust. It's somebody that you know is going to communicate with you whenever something happens. They came in and they gave them some other medication for this. They checked their blood pressure. They are prepping them from this. Make sure that it's somebody who can communicate effectively with you when you are not present with your loved one. If you're going to have somebody there that can give you a full update on what happened when you stepped out and took your break. Make sure you are feeding yourself, because the last thing you want to do is end up with a really weird eating schedule like me, which I am yet to get back on track. And make sure that you are taking time to ground yourself. And that is going to be, it can be really hard. I can tell you it can be extremely hard because you're going to want to be there. You're going to want to know everything that's going on. You may not want to leave your loved one, but it is essential that you take care of yourself, because the last thing you need is to be like me, who unfortunately got COVID, got sick, and I couldn't physically be there for my family, handling things It brought another level of complication to the situation. And, I'm okay with that. It happened for a reason. I wasn't supposed to be there the entirety of the time my dad was there, but if I could have it differently, I would have not gotten sick. So make sure that you're taking some steps to ground. Meditation. Make sure that you take some time for yourself in the morning, in the middle of the day, when you're stepping out. Meditate. Lean on whatever it is that you need to lean on to get you through. And make sure that you're stepping outside, because that is so important. You're going to be spending so much time, if you ever end up in a situation that's even close to this, you're going to spend a lot of time in a hospital. And it's a very sterile environment, and it gets really exhausting. Step outside. Look for the life that's going out outside of the hospital. There are still things that are good that are going on as you're moving through this. Lean on people who are your support system, people who are going to be there for you. Go outside and go find a bird to watch. Go look at a tree, do something, give yourself a break, and make sure that you're grounding yourself. Look for meditations, look for grounding activities, and allow yourself to express your emotions, whether that be through writing it on your phone, writing it in a journal, taking a video of yourself, documenting. Do something to where you can express your emotions privately for yourself. And although you may not keep it, you may delete it, you may never go back to it, but maybe you will. Maybe you just want to see that growth. Maybe that just might help you move through what you're going through. So take the time to also document your feelings and make sure that you are checking in with yourself, because it's so easy to just allow your self-care to just slip away from you. I'm going to do a couple more things and I'm going to be done. Another thing that I do want to bring up, and I'm not sure if everybody knows about this because I recently learned about this, but lean on the hospital's resources. There are typically resources in every single hospital, and they're there to help you. And that may make it a lot easier for you. There are patient advocates, there are social workers who can walk you through the next steps of your care. Typically, patients are assigned some type of caseworker, social worker who handles your loved one's case. Make sure that you reach out to them. Request to speak to them. When they've been assigned, make sure that you know who they are and that you are in communication with them, because that might also ease the process of understanding what the next steps would be. A lot of hospitals also have some type of chaplain or chapel services. If you are, I'm not sure, I don't know how to say this, but you're going to have to edit this. A lot of hospitals also have chapel or chaplain services. And that's something that is also available to you if that's something that you want to lean on as well. I've seen hospitals that have actual chapels in there, and I have also met chaplains who go from room to room and check in on families and provide support in any way they can. You don't have to be a specific religion. Throughout meeting a couple of these, they tend to be very sensitive to what your family is going through and sensitive to whether you have a spiritual denomination or religion that you follow. The other thing is sometimes hospitals do have financial coordinators, resources, somebody who provides resources between the financial services. I would also urge you to ask questions and find out if the hospital that you're in has that, because that could be very helpful for you as well to help you out with understanding the finances, understanding the impact that this is going to have on your family, on what's going on. They can be very helpful in just explaining the bills, explaining the care, and everything that is going to be taking place. Again, I want to stress, make sure that you're giving yourself moments for yourself. It is okay to lighten up on when you get to the hospital. It's okay to say, on the third day, I don't want to go right when the hospital opens. I want to go get Starbucks. I want to go sit down and have breakfast. I want to take a drive and I want to listen to upbeat music today, because everything that I've possibly been listening to has just been very somber. Maybe you haven't been listening to music at all. Take those moments, take those times, because those are essential, and that's what's going to recharge you. That's what's going to keep you going. And yes, myself, my mom, my family, we were there. One of us was there every day, but we learned to give ourselves permission to lighten up a little bit. There were some days where we didn't have to be there exactly when they opened up, once we got past what was the hardest part of the process. We allowed ourselves to take times to go get Starbucks before. Go, take those moments for you, because you are going to need those moments. You're going to need to lean in on those little things that are going to become essential to helping you just move through everything. Do you feel like I've given enough tips? Reminder that you can't pour from an empty cup. So you need to make sure that you are pouring into yours and that you are giving yourself the time, the sensitivity for your emotions, and the little things that you need. And I also urge you, make sure you bring a jacket or a blanket, because it gets cold in hospitals. I'm sure a lot of you already know that, but it is essential. Water, blanket, snacks, journal, pens, whatever it is that you need, make sure that you bring it. If you can't do it, you have somebody else who can help you. Make sure that somebody else is in charge of bringing all that stuff, making sure you have everything you need for each day that you are there. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Fatherhood Voices. Until next time, I hope that you all have a great rest of your week. And my hope for you is that you hold your loved ones a little bit tighter today. You tell them you love them, and you take a moment to just appreciate everything that you have right now, because it won't always be the same. And it's not that something bad necessarily is going to happen. It's that life evolves and things change. Enjoy these moments that you have right now, because one day they'll be everything.